Have you ever been reading through Genesis? Maybe you hit chapter 5 and you find your eyes just kind of glazing over. It's that list, right? All the names, the lifespans, the begats. It can feel, well, maybe a bit dry, even the most, let's say, boring part of this huge story. But what if that list, that simple-looking list, is actually, I don't know, a hidden poem, something profound, just waiting there? Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is we're doing exactly that. We're taking a deep dive right into Genesis 5. And you're right, traditionally, people see it as, well, just a list, a register of who lived and how long. But there's this really insightful work by Skylar Fiction, Carriers of the Breath. And Fiction argues this chapter is something much deeper. It's described as a, quote, sacred liturgy of human fragility, divine memory, and the persistence of breath.
Wow, okay. So our mission today then is to really dig into that. To find the theological meaning hidden in the names, yes, but also like in the structure itself. We want to challenge you listening right now to try and hear the sacred in the repetition, find the mercy hidden in all that time passing and see God's presence maybe still hidden in these ancient names. Think of this as your shortcut, a way to get really well informed about a surprisingly rich piece of scripture most people just skim over. We're going to guide you through this scroll that seems so dry on the surface, and I promise you'll never look at a list of names, maybe even your own family history, quite the same way again. So let's start right at the beginning, Genesis 5, verses 1 and 2. It opens with that Hebrew phrase, Ze Sefer Toledot Adam, which translates to, this is the scroll of the generations of Adam. But that word sefer means more than just story, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What's the weight behind using that word here?
That's a really key starting point. Sefer. It isn't just any account. It specifically means a formal document, a scroll, or a book. Think royal records or divine decrees, something set down for sacred remembrance. So right away, the text is signaling, pay attention. This isn't casual. This is inscribed memory, like architecture.
Architecture, I like that. And what about Toledot? We usually hear generations, but is there more packed in there too?
Oh, absolutely. Toledot does mean offspring generations, yes. But it also carries this beautiful sense of unfolding, of lineage and becoming. It's dynamic. It's not just who came next, but how they unfolded, how the story continued through them. And what's really striking in Genesis 5 is how the genealogy itself is the theology. It's different from Genesis 2 or 4, where the focus was maybe more on speech or offerings. Here, the rhythm of life, of begetting life, that's the theological core. And notice how it deliberately loops back to Adam. Not just the guy Adam, but Adam as like the category of humanity.
That's a really important distinction. And speaking of Adam, verse 1 echoes Genesis 1.27, but subtly different. It says, Biambra Elohim Adam, in the day God created man. What jumps out at you there?
Well, first, it highlights that specific, remembered, singular Yom day of creation. But what's not there is just as interesting. There's no mention here of dominion, right? Or subduing the earth, like in Genesis 1. The focus narrows right down to the act of formation. Bidmet Elohim asa oto. In the likeness of God, he made him. It's a very specific, almost curated memory of creation.
Okay, so let's talk about that word likeness, demut Elohim. How does that relate to or maybe differ from the word image, selim, used back in Genesis 1?
Yeah, this is crucial for understanding the whole chapter, really. Genesis 1 uses selim, which is more like image, representation, maybe even a statue. But here, demut emphasizes likeness, resemblance. Think echo, relational affinity. It's less about a perfect statue and more like a reverberation. The divine essence is still there, preserved, but maybe like looking at a slightly dusty mirror. Humanity here is described as this whisper of divinity clothed in breath and dust. It's like a memory of God encoded in flesh.
Yeah.
The imago Dei, the image of God, it's something carried, passed down.
Wow. And then right after that, you get this really powerful theological correction or maybe clarification. Sakaron kweva Bram, male and female, he created them. And then, Vayekra Ishamum Adam, he called their name Adam. Not his name, but their name. What's the significance of that collective naming?
It's huge. It underlines that the image of God isn't held by an individual alone. It's plural. The blessing is shared. The naming is communal. This isn't just some ancient grammar point. It's telling us something fundamental about being human, about unity. That we're interconnected at the deepest level, before any divisions.
So Genesis 5 isn't just about death and lineage. It actually starts with this profound collective memory of creation.
Exactly right. It's not primarily a death ledger. It's what Skylar Fiction calls a liturgical artifact, like a temple made of names, a genealogy that breathes with a sacred rhythm. It doesn't really argue points like other texts might. It chants them. It insists humanity is made in God's likeness, that likeness is shared, blessed, and named together.
Okay, that sets a powerful stage. Let's move then to Genesis 5, verse 3, because here's where it gets really interesting. Adam has a son, Seth, and the text says he does this beide mitoxelamo, in his likeness, after his image. Because it feels like the pattern flips. The divine pattern that made Adam is now happening through human hands.
It's a stunning inversion, isn't it? Just think. Genesis 1.26, God makes humans in our image, eselem, after our likeness, demut. Now Adam begets Seth in his likeness, demut, after his image. See how the order flips? And the creator is now Adam, not God directly. This isn't just Adam copying God. It feels more like a transference. Seth is, you could say, a copy of a copy. He inherits Adam's image, which is already a step removed, a mediated image. It's a likeness carried through exile after leaving Eden. But, and this is key, even this fractured image is still sacred. It shows that something divine, something essential, persists down the line.
Right. And the name Seth itself, Shet, it comes from a root meaning to place or to set, to a point.
Yeah.
So the name itself sounds like restoration, maybe a theological scar where Abel used to be.
Precisely. He's the appointed one, placed into that gap left by violence. And look how the verse starts. Vayechi Adam, shloshem umeat shana. And Adam lived 130 years. That verb, vayechi, meaning he lived, that becomes the drumbeat for this whole chapter, the sacred rhythm. Life is counted, yes, but it's marked by this verb, he lived. And then veiled, he generated, showing the male role and passing on this theological substance. And crucially, notice the image comes before the name. The essence precedes the label.
That's a great observation. And this kicks off that core rhythm that really defines Genesis 5, right? I hear it so clearly in verses 4 and 5. He lived, he begot, he died. It's not just data entry. It really does feel like you said, a slow tolling bell.
It absolutely does. And the Hebrew itself reinforces this feeling of accumulation, of weight. Vayhu Adam. And the days of Adam is not just a number. The phrasing suggests the days themselves are gathered, remembered. It evokes quality, the substance of those days, not just the quantity. And then, Atraholido et Shet, after he begot Seth, it measures Adam's remaining life in relation to his offspring. Even the unnamed sons and daughters mentioned later, they're part of this rhythm. Inclusion without detail, but still honored by the cadence.
And then that hammer blow at the end of each entry, Vayamo, and he died. So stark, just 3 words in Hebrew.
Utterly direct. No adornment. Proclaiming the finality of breath for each one. And this rhythmic, almost liturgical genealogy is so different from Cain's line back in Genesis 4. Remember, Cain's descendants. Their story is full of violence, innovation, building cities, rupture. Only Seth's line, the one explicitly said to carry the demut and selim, gets this measured sacred cadence. It suggests time here is a kind of sacred trust. Breath continues through the act of begetting, and death, while final, does not erase what was lived. Each life is chanted into the record.
Okay, so as we move through the next section, Genesis 5.6 to 20, we follow this line from Seth down to Enoch. And it feels like each name adds another layer, another subtle theological note. Let's start with Seth's son, Enosh. His name, Enosh. Doesn't exactly sound heroic, does it?
Not at all. The root an-esh implies weakness, mortality, frailty, even sickness. You hear echoes of it in places like Psalm 8, asking, what is man, Enosh, that you are mindful of him? So right after Seth, the appointed one, you get Enosh, whose name is almost a confession, a statement of human limitation. It suggests the divine likeness, the imago Dei, is carried forward in vulnerability. Then comes Kenan. His name is fascinatingly ambiguous. Is it from Shina, meaning lament, or Ken, meaning nest, a place of dwelling? It's like human identity itself is presented as caught between longing and limitation, rootedness and ruin.
It's amazing how much theology is packed just into the names. After Kenan, we get Mahalalel. And that name is pretty direct. Mahalalel means praise of God. It's the first time in this list that divinity is explicitly invoked in a name.
Yes, but notice the hidden irony there. Praise returns, but it's sort of embedded in this pattern of near silence from God's side. God isn't speaking or acting directly in this chapter. His presence is only voiced through the name. It's like a whisper of transcendence, but it's buried deep within this descending line of mortals. And immediately after praise of God, we get Jared. His name comes from you are due to descend. His name marks the first downward shift. You have this stark juxtaposition, praise, then descent. It subtly hints, maybe, at the decline towards the flood narrative later on.
And that descent leads us right to the major disruption, the big rupture in this steady rhythm. Enoch, Genesis 5.21-24. Suddenly that predictable pattern, he lived, he died, it just breaks. Enoch doesn't die, he walks, and then he's gone. So what does this all mean? Why break the pattern here?
The text is incredibly specific and intentional here. It says, Veithlek chenoka et Halohim, and Enoch walked with God. and it says it twice for emphasis. That verb form, yithalek, it implies continuous action, a habitual practice. Like this was his way of life. It wasn't a one-off event. It was constant communion. And significantly, this is the first time since Adam and Eve were walking with God in the garden, Genesis 3:8, that we hear this phrase about a hume. It's as if, after generations of distance, Enoch somehow relearns the rhythm of the garden walk.
And the description of his end is so blunt. Veineno kilakachota Elohim, and he was no more, for God took him. That phrase, einenu, he is not. It's so final, yet different.
It really is. And the verb used is lakak, meaning to take. Crucially, this verb is never used for anyone else's death in Genesis 5. Everyone else just vayamo, they died. But God took Enoch. Lakak implies intentionality, intimacy, almost like God claiming him. Think of Elijah later on. This isn't presented as random mortality. It feels like a deliberate divine act, a divine claim. And it makes you ask, right, why Enoch specifically? What does it mean to be taken instead of dying? It cracks open another possibility. It hints that maybe some part of us, when it's truly aligned with the divine, doesn't just end. It's taken. It's like a prophecy written in footsteps.
And it's interesting, too, that his lifespan, 365 years, is relatively short for that era. It feels symbolic, like the solar year.
Exactly. His whole story is this theological rupture. He becomes this living fragment of Eden, somehow walking forward through the dust of the post-Eden world. He shows that breath, that life force, isn't necessarily extinguished. And then, right after this unique figure, we meet his son, Methuselah, Genesis 5:25-27. And his name, Methuselah. Talk about heavy foreshadowing. It's like a riddle stitched into time.
Yeah.
The meaning is debated, but common interpretations are ominous. His death shall bring it, or perhaps man of the dart javelin. Something points towards judgment.
And of course, Methuselah lives the longest life recorded in the Bible, 969 years. How does that extreme age fit the pattern?
Well, you could say his greatness is in delay. There's a strong tradition going way back that the year Methuselah died was the very year the flood began. So his incredibly long life isn't just about endurance. It's seen as mercy extended. Divine judgment literally waits for him to fall.
Yeah.
There's a powerful theology in that waiting. God allows him to live and live and live, essentially buying time for the world. This isn't just empty waiting, it's sacred delay. It's an implicit invitation for change that wasn't taken. Methuselah becomes the embodiment of theology of restraint. He's living proof that God's justice is patient, not impulsive. He's like this ancient, silent monument to forbearance.
So even from Methuselah, we get the familiar refrain, he lived, he died, but with him, those massive numbers, 969 years, they ring louder. They feel like the slow unfolding of cosmic ages.
He really is the final thread of divine forbearance. A life so long it almost feels like an act of intercession in itself. And his death then symbolically releases the waters. He's the last breath of that old world.
Okay, now we reach Lamech, Methuselah's son, in Genesis 5:28-31. And he does something no one else in this chapter has done. He speaks. After that long, solemn drumbeat of names and years, suddenly we hear a human voice. A cry from the depths of wearied breath.
It's a startling shift, isn't it? Lamech doesn't just passively receive a name or live out his years. He actively names his son Noah and explains why. He declares, Zeyenetimenu, this one shall comfort us. That root word is so rich. It means comfort, yes, but also carries echoes of divine repentance, of mourning. It's heavy with grief, but also holds a seed of hope. And what does he want comfort from? From our work and the toil sorrow of our hands. And listen to this. That word, itzavon, sorrow or toil. It's the exact same word God used when cursing Adam and Eve, the sorrow in childbirth, the painful toil of working the ground. Lamech is explicitly referencing the fall. He's feeling the ongoing weight, the grief of cursed soil centuries later.
And he makes that connection explicit. Min hadama asher arera, YHWH, from the ground which YHWH is cursed. He's basically crying out for mercy, for relief from the curse itself. And he names his son Noah a name linked to rest, relief, maybe even a deep exhale. This is the first real human voice expressing need in this whole chapter. It's not a command, not a prophecy exactly, but a plea. It feels like our voice, the voice of just trying to endure.
And Noah's name, therefore, becomes a focal point of hope, but it's not yet a solution. Lamech doesn't know how Noah will bring comfort, just that he must. He pins his hopes on him. Noah becomes the last hope of a dying world. Oh, no. It's also quite poignant that Lamech lived 777 years. That number often signifies sacred completion or fullness, so his life is, like, numerically symmetrical but narratively tragic, because he dies before the flood. He won't see Noah build the ark or fulfill that hope. His act of naming Noah, expressing that hope, it's purely an act of faith and something he won't witness.
And that leads us to the very last verse, Genesis 5.32. Noah was 500 years old, and Noah begot Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And it just stops there. There's such restraint. No death notice for Noah yet, no grand statement, just the begetting. His years aren't yet closed off by, and he died.
That pause is incredibly powerful. It's not just the end of the list, it's sacred anticipation. It's a kind of theology of suspense, the stillness before transformation. Noah stands right there as a hinge figure. He marks the closing of one age, the cursed age Lamech lamented, and holds the seed of whatever comes next. What does that tell you, maybe, about divine timing? That even after all the generations, the prophecy, the pain, there's this long pause, a slow breath. The world just waits. It's not waiting for Noah to speak yet, but for God to act, to call.
So the whole genealogy doesn't really end with a full stop. It just sort of dissolves into this moment of expectancy. Noah isn't the period. He's like an ellipsis, right? A space between covenant and catastrophe. Wow. What an incredible journey through what looks like just a list of names. Genesis 5 really isn't just a genealogy, is it? It feels more like a liturgy. A sacred poem hammered out in the rhythm of breath and time. We saw that subtle story told through the names. Seth carrying the divine spark, then Enosh acknowledging human frailty, Mahalalel whispering praise, Jared marking the descent. We felt the rhythm break with Enoch, who walked with God and was taken, not claimed by death like the others. We sensed the immense weight of Methuselah's life, a monument to divine patience, holding back judgment. We heard Lamech's raw cry for comfort, naming Noah as a tangible hope. And then we ended with Noah himself, in that profound pause that held breath before the storm.
Exactly. And running underneath all of it is this hidden truth. God hasn't walked away from this lineage, from the scroll. His name, his essence is woven into their names. His breath echoes in the pattern, generation after generation. His mercy is there, hiding in the long years, in the waiting. It's really a theology of survival. You'd even call it a spirituality of dust. It suggests that simple acts, to walk faithfully like Enoch, to name hope like Lamech, to wait patiently like Methuselah, or maybe like God waited for Methuselah, these are sacred acts. We walk, maybe like Enoch did, with the understanding that death isn't the only possibility. And that breath, that life we're given, is never truly wasted.
So here's a final thought to maybe chew on. If Genesis 5, this list of names that seems so understated, so boring maybe, can hold such deep truths about persistence and mercy and the way God's likeness endures, what other boring parts of the world, or maybe just the routines of your own life, might be chanting a kind of sacred song that you just haven't paused long enough to really hear? What part of your story, your daily rhythm, might have a hidden theology just waiting for you to uncover it?